I'm going to give the last flash talk, and it's a general flash talk, and this is actually supposed to be delivered by our colleague, Dr. Bryant Lynn, who unfortunately couldn't make the trip. But the topic of this flash talk was interdisciplinary innovation the Stanford way. And I think what Stanford really is known for is innovation, right? If you think of universities and Stanford, it's computer science, it's engineering, it's medicine, it really is innovation. And there's some really unique aspects of Stanford, and I think we discussed this in a bunch of the talks here, right? One is location. We are the closest major university to the Pacific Rim. If you think about, in Korea, there's this joke, it's called HIPS, right? HYPS, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. So we're the only one on the West Coast, and we have a unique population, like we've all talked about. Right now, of the Bay Area, about 30% are Asians, and it's projected that we're going to be the majority by 2040. In the Bay Area. Asians will be the majority in the Bay Area. We're talking about faculty members. Dean Miner, talked about 20% of the faculty are Asians. Within the division of gastroenterology, 50% of the over 50% of the faculty are Asians. So, it is very different than Ohio or the East Coast, and that's why we are really uniquely positioned to be the center for Asian health. And there's all these opportunities for collaboration. So the obvious ones where we're on campus. We're on campus. The medical center is on the campus of Stanford University. Just being physically co-located really helps with all types of collaborations. And we have a brand new hospital that Dean Miner helped to get. It's a beautiful facility. Unfortunately, the endoscopy unit didn't get put in there, but we'll talk later. We have, the traditional programs, the way you think of a university. You have the School of Medicine, the College of Engineering, the Graduate School of Business, all major internationally recognized leaders in their field. So those are the natural kind of collaborations. And then what has Stanford done with that? I mean, there's so many interdisciplinary centers that we have the ability to work with. And I think about my story. I've only been at Stanford for 5 years, but Stanford was somewhere that I think I was always going to end up, right? So I'm an engineer by training. I did electrical engineering as an undergraduate. I did biomedical engineering. I'm an innovator. Stanford had been recruiting me for 10 years before I decided to eventually go down, but I always knew I was going to end up there because it is such a unique environment. And after I got there, I realized it was even more unique and more special than I could have even imagined. And I had been at the University of Washington, which is top-notch, international university, but there are things that you can do at Stanford that you can't do anywhere else. And I think Asian health is one of those. Because why? We have the population. There isn't a single other major university that has the population that we do, that has the university, the medical center, that's all co-located in one location. And that primes us for many of these innovations. So you have Stanford Biodesign, and Singapore knows about this because Singapore has been one of the core partners in the whole biodesign sphere that, they brag about, the success of collaborations and how much Singapore has played a role in biodesign. So that's already been going on. There's something called Spark, which is a way for industry in medicine to collaborate to help with drug development. We have the new human-centered artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the catchphrase, right? I mean, everybody's looking at AI applications in medicine, and we want to, harness that for Asian health in particular, and Dr. Palaniappan's been talking about that as well. Bryant is passionate about medicine and the humanities, and so I want to make a plug for him on that, because that's a really important part. I know Dean Miner plays the cello, I play the viola, a lot of us play instruments. We just started a new Stanford medicine orchestra and choir. This is part of life, right? And this is by being put together and integrating, these are the things that just happen. So Stanford's a very exciting place to be. We really want, the reason we're here in Singapore, we have plans to go to other parts of Asia, is we want to engage with the rest of the Asian community. And we're intentionally, I don't think Talatha mentioned this, we intentionally did not call this the Center for Asian American Health. This is the Center for Asian Health. And we want to collaborate, and previously discussed, we learn more from coming to Asia. We learn about the Asian disease here, and we take it back, and we apply that to our patients here. So it's really a two-way collaboration, and we're really looking forward to further collaborations with those people here in Singapore and other parts of Asia. So with that, I think that's the end of the flash talks. I think what we'd like to do right now is to give you guys all an opportunity to ask some questions. So I'm going to ask all the speakers, Dean Miner, Dr. Kovas, Dr. Palaniappan. We're going to get 4 chairs here, and we're going to field some questions. So think of some probing questions that you'd like to ask. Anything any topic is open for questions. So,
hi, thank you all so much for bringing this all together. So my question would be: so as a Asia or China-based startup company with our own special technology to identify biomarkers or drug targets, how can we work together with all of you?
So thank you for that question. We did get a chance to chat about this a little bit earlier, and I'll share with the group. Through Dean Miner's vision, also, we have a biobank at Stanford, and as you have seen by the demographics, our biobank has many Asians. And so I know you're developing some innovative biomarkers to detect depression and other mental health disorders, and that is a difficult diagnosis in any part of the world. So we would love to work with you, merging our electronic health record diagnosis, so the phenotypes with the genotypes and the biomarkers in the biobank that we already have collected, I think would be a great way to leverage and accelerate scientific discovery in Asian populations.
I don't think you can overestimate our ignorance about what is going on out there. And I think most of us are easily findable. Reach out. Don't assume, one of the things that amazes me, and I've had some conversation with people, are explosion of knowledge. And that also is explosion of ideas and new concepts and new things. Reach out. I think we are thirsty. We are hungry.
Hi, thanks very much for bringing this to Singapore. My name is Wei Yang. I'm from the Ministry of Health in Singapore. I happen to have gone to the MIT, but anyway, I do think Stanford has a lot to offer. But I think one of the key things I wanted to just highlight was that we are in Singapore indeed very focused on this whole idea of R&D research and related work around the Asian phenotypes and genotypes. We know that that's where we probably have differentiating advantage maybe compared to many other jurisdictions. I'm very glad to see Stanford actually wanting to focus on that and reaching out to try to form a potential collaboration or partnerships with us. And so just want to give the assurance that we are aware. We have already been working in some of these areas in precision health with a focus on the Asian like genotype, phenotype, electronic health records, and even what we call daily activity records, just to form a database for a lot of work that can then take place. So happy to look for collaborations, happy to look for possibilities. So related to that, I'm just then wondering what's your thinking in terms of how you would like to collaborate? Do you see like more like Dimitrios people coming over, having sort of sabbaticals, working together? Do you intend to set up centers here? Do you, I mean, obviously you do have a biobank on your site. On our site, in terms of the precision health program that we are in the process of, we've done the 10K, we are in the process of collecting 100K. We hope to get to 1 million within maybe 3 to 5 years. And of course, 1 million, from 1 million to 5 million, which is our population, it's not a huge stretch of imagination to think of genomic precision medicine as part of how we deliver healthcare in Singapore. And of course, the good thing about Singapore is that like we do cover the Asian genomics in a big way in terms of what you call the Oriental populations, the Dravidians of like Polynesian populations, which come in the form of Malays and South Indians, as well as the more Northern Indian Aryan populations. We do have all of them in Singapore. We also have, of course, people who come from around the world to work in Singapore, and a lot of possibilities for cross-comparison sort of like studies that could take place. So I would like to hear, are you just here to look for people to come and work with you there, or are you looking for the possibility of putting something here as well and actually expanding on that? A second question I didn't kind of have was around traditional medicine, traditional Chinese medicines, and so which you did mention a little bit. If you think about it, traditional Chinese medicine is the epitome of precision medicine. There are some drugs that people use to cure you. They take your pulse, they then decide what proportion of each one to actually give to you, and then this is your medication. Now, of course, the difficulty with Chinese medication is that because there's so many sort of like chemicals within any given herb, we have not been able to, in a way, identify the active ingredients and so on that go with it. What is your own philosophy or thinking around something like that? Because we have not been able to figure out ourselves as well how to approach it, but I just wonder whether there's some thinking on within the care on some of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I will start by thanking the members of NUS who have met with us, and they've told us about the Healthy SG initiative. And I have to tell you that they spoke very lovingly of the Ministry of Health, which is not the same relationship that we have with the NIH. So I'm glad to see the academic and government partnerships being so strong. And I want to thank Sheila Wang for bringing us together with Dr. Wong from NUS and Dr. Kwek, who's here from the Jurong campus. So thank you for taking the time to meet with us on Friday. And as Dr. Wong and I met with the groups, we were very impressed with the advances that have been done in precision medicine. We learned about the preemptive genetic pharmacogenetic testing that is being done, and Ian Matthews told us about these programs, and actually there's a trainee in the audience that I hope to attract to come to Stanford for the year. And I will also mention that Dr. Esther Tan, who's an ER physician here, the Ministry of Health is funding 6 months to come to Stanford, so thank you for that. And so that is how we hope to start our initial exchanges. And we know that science is all about relationships, and that's how we will start these collaborations. And as we build upon them and really get a center of gravity around it, hopefully we will build a center of excellence around here, around this topic. Thank you for mentioning the incredible diversity in Singapore. As Sally Lee stated, this is the heart of Asia. So we are delighted to come and start these collaborations. And then in terms of your second question on alternative medicines, we did have a conference on complementary alternative medicine therapies. And we have been thinking about this too. How do we design trials that really contrast personalized medicine, right? Because the medication prescription is different for each person in Chinese medicine based on their specific attributes like pulse and constipation even, and the dryness of their skin, and really personalizing it. And that's not something that we do in Western medicine. And just a thought, I'll put this out there and I'd love to talk with you more, is actually doing a randomized controlled trial of Chinese medicine versus Western medicine for rheumatoid arthritis, for instance. I think some of those, and I joke, all of those diseases that we treat with steroids in Western medicine are much more amenable to complementary alternative therapies. So I will hand it off to some of my colleagues if they want to address that question as well. Okay. Thank you, and I look forward to chatting with you more afterwards.
Hi everyone, my name is Shen, and unlike Wei Yang, I am a Stanford alum, so we'll let you stay. I'm the CEO of the American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. I'm also an adjunct at NUS School of Public Health. And one of the things we do talk a lot about in this region, particularly those of us in public health, is lower and middle income countries. And I didn't see so much mention of that today. And the gastric cancer one that Dr. Wong spoke about is certainly top of mind for us here. But I do worry when you talk about screening, a lot of it is about resources, right? I recently had my first colonoscopy, and I asked my doctor, I saw some recommendations that you don't even need to get it more than once every 10 years. And he says to me, that's because of a resourcing problem, a funding problem. So in some countries around the region, Indonesia, Vietnam, they're going to be facing a much different situation than those of us sitting in wonderful Singapore. So I wonder what the thinking is right now, or the research going on at Stanford for lower and middle income countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question because gastric cancer really impacts the lower and middle income regions disproportionately. I think the ideal situation is to prevent gastric cancer, and I think the cheapest way to prevent gastric cancer is test and treat for H. pylori. And that can be done very, very cost effectively, and that's something that we're not doing. So we're just starting to implement that. So I think that's the most cost-effective long-term strategy, is to test and treat for H. pylori, eradicate that, and then we should, then the rates of gastric cancer should come down substantially, and we would be saving hundreds of thousands of lives without much cost to society. You are correct. Endoscopy is expensive, and that's why China has a very high rate of gastric cancer, but there is no coherent endoscopic screening program in China because of the cost. It's cost prohibitive right now. So, we have to look at more cost-effective ways. That's why biomarkers are becoming important. So we're looking at stool DNA tests. So non-invasive ways to better risk stratify, to figure out who are those people who really do need endoscopy. And so that's the research that we're trying to do.
And if I could build on that, and the comments of Dr. Wong earlier, we looked up what percentage of the GDP is spent on health, and incidentally, Singapore and the US have the same GDP, and Singapore has the highest GDP of any Asian country. So when we talk about Asia, we're often talking about low middle income countries, and Singapore is an exception to that. And despite having the same GDP, the US spends 18% on healthcare. Singapore spends 5% on healthcare, and the health outcomes are much better in Singapore. So as Dr. Wong mentioned, we have a lot to learn from Singapore, and we're excited to start these collaborations so we can learn what you're doing so we can bend the cost curve in the United States.
Hi, Wei Li here. I'm a physician trained in Singapore, but now I'm a venture capitalist in the Bay Area. I'm, first time learning about care, and just curious to know what's the approach regarding precision medicine and the relationship with social determinants of health. I mean, such a big thing here in the Bay, and definitely affecting how aging, chronic disease, and other kind of diseases that we're interested in. Is that a purview of care? And how are you looking at it in terms of partnerships with, let's say, Singapore and other types of organizations here? I train as a psychiatrist, so SDOH is quite a pet subject of mine. So just keen to hear how you guys see it.
So social determinants of health is very much a framework that we follow in terms of thinking about disease disparities in Asian populations. And I'm going to shout out again to Dr. Kwek because he has done an incredible project in Batik Batong. I hope I said that right. I probably destroyed it. Esther, can you help me out? Bukit Batong. And so they, over COVID, have done a community-based needs assessment for social determinants of health. And I'll quote Dean Miner, who says, the postcode is more important than the genetic code. And while my own heart is in precision medicine, and I think that we still have a lot to learn from our genetic code, we recognize that these social determinants of health are so important, and it is beyond what we're able to do one-on-one in a clinic room. I also, as part of my role, teach population health to all of our residents and medical students, and it's really helping them learn that there are individual factors that determine health, community factors, policy level factors. I think Singapore has been astonishing to me just how much policy level intervention is done for health, and I'm excited to see the close relationships between the Ministry of Health and the academic institutions. And what we observed is that Singapore is able to be much more nimble, an island country of 5 million people compared to the United States with 340 million people, and a democracy that works a little bit better at some times than others, in terms of really improving the health of this community and doing it in a coordinated way without, I guess, too much friction.
Hey, I'm Mark. I'm the co-founder of BioPharmacy, and my question is about clinical trial, especially the cross-region clinical trial. I wanted to know, as Stanford Care, what's your particular, any thoughts about this clinical trial parts? Thank you.
Multi-site clinical trials, I think, are among the most challenging things that clinical researchers do. One of my colleagues recently made the positive point that when he looked at all the innovations in clinical medicine, he thought widespread implementation of large, controlled, randomized trials was, in fact, the biggest leap forward technologically. Not all this stuff that may be a little bit more popular in Silicon Valley, not very popular for a Stanford professor to say. But I think in getting at your question, in order to do those trials, you're going to need to be recruiting broad populations and cross borders. I'm going to maybe venture into a little bit of dangerous water. There are some real political challenges from country to country to running a trial cross borders. So in my prior job, I was at the National Cancer Institute, US, and we ran trials primarily in the US and Canada. And even in a well-established system where there were agreements in place, it often was a huge challenge because what was considered a standard thing in the US wasn't in Canada by policy. I think we need to look at those as challenges, not look at those as reasons to say we just can't do it. As I mentioned a little bit on my talk, it's already being done to some extent in a lot of the diseases that I think, but I think we need to really change our viewpoint and say this is standard. This isn't exceptional, crossing borders. I'm going to say I think private industry, pharma, has in some ways done it better than government-sponsored trials. Pharma gets, I can do a trial in Russia, in South America, in Asia, and in the US, and I'm going to do it where it's most efficient. However, I think some of their focus on getting to an answer neglects a lot of the things that we think are so important about collecting information on response diversity. So I want to A, acknowledge it's a huge problem. B, there is progress being made. C, I think we need to actually have political advocacy in that arena to increase or rather lower the borders to make it more common.
And if I could add to Dr. Kalivas's comments, as we saw, Asians are less likely to participate in clinical trials, and this is a problem because the drugs and devices that are used in Asians aren't tested in Asians. The Code of Federal Regulations in the United States was just changed. There's a new law that went into effect December 2022 that there should be a diversity action plan in every phase 3 clinical trial. And through the support of CARE, we were able to receive a $4.5 million grant from the American Heart Association to increase diversity in clinical trials, specifically for Asians and other groups. And we're testing different ways, social media, peer navigators, research registries, to see what works best to increase diversity for each group. And so we really need to have our clinical trials represent the populations that we serve so our drugs and devices can work better.
Actually, I want to ask a question for the dean because it's so rare to have him and maybe put him on the spot a little bit. But it's a kind of a bigger picture type question. Is we've talked a lot about engaging Asia. And so from the School of Medicine perspective at Stanford, I mean, how would you like to see Stanford, and in particular Stanford Health, engage with Asia? Not just the Asian community, but Asia itself.
Yeah, thank you. I think a number of ideas have already been suggested during the discussion, but we're certainly eager to explore collaborations with the universities in Asia, with NUS, NTU, collaborations between academic institutions really have to have first and foremost the deep engagement of faculty on each side. So, I can think that something is a really great idea, that we should be doing something in collaboration with another university and institution. If the faculty who are actually involved in that collaboration interaction aren't 100% committed to its success, then it won't succeed, even if I think it's a great idea. So what we try to do, in leadership and in the dean's office is to make the initial connections, to open up opportunities, and then to make sure that to the extent that we can, the administrative processes are streamlined and that faculty are assisted in navigating those processes. As Demetrios said, there are just a host of complexities when it comes to human subjects research, understandably. And those have to be respected. And, I wish I could say that I thought that some of those non-essential complexities were going to go away, that it was going to become more facile, easier to do human subjects interactive research across borders, in different countries, different governments. But I think given sort of the geopolitical situation of the world today, that's unlikely to change in the short to intermediate term. I also think there's nothing that's impossible. And when there's a really compelling reason, and when there's the dedication of the faculty involved, then I think even those clinical trials and the exchange of information pertaining to patients is possible across borders. But it does require a host of regulatory approvals and hurdles in order to make it happen. So I guess the conclusions that I would offer in terms of next steps are, in the end, it's all about the people. And for all of us, it's about our faculty. And it's about having a shared vision of how a collaboration can improve the success of both institutions and ultimately improve human health. And I think when those conditions have been met, then we can usually get things done. I've rarely, in the decade I've been dean, seen something that we had strong faculty support for, a lot of engagement, that in the end we could not make work. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than any of us would like, but in the end, we're committed to getting the yes whenever we can. And increasingly, the most challenging problems are going to require those types of collaborations across institutions and across countries. And so that's one reason why I'm so enthusiastic to be here, why I'm so glad we're reopening in person our connections with Asia, and why I'm hopeful about the future of what we can accomplish.
Music to our ears. And I wanted to kind of add to that. So we created, the vision for this center is actually precisely that, right? To create the infrastructure that would allow Stanford faculty to engage with outside faculty and to streamline that administrative process. So we consider CARE a platform and an infrastructure that will really help to facilitate future collaborations with other Asian institutions. And that really is our big picture dream to create at Stanford, so that we can really, at Stanford, we can facilitate Asian health research and help the US population as well as the entire global population, wherever Asians may reside. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their participation in this. I want to particularly thank Karen Lee for hosting this and sponsoring this wonderful event here at this beautiful facility and golf course. With that, we'll do some more networking and then we'll have some lunch. But all of us are available to talk, and I hope that we can engage and come up with ways that we can collaborate. So thank you very much.